The detention facility on Kepler 44 to be hummed with the artificial atmosphere generators. A constant reminder that this world wasn't meant for human lungs. Ronnie stood at his post, electromagnetic rifle slung across his back, watching the endless corridors of crystalline cells that held the galaxy's most dangerous beings. He'd been a mercenary for the Galactic Union for 3 cycles now, and the pay was good enough to ignore the moral questions. The Vraxian guards beside him chittered nervously, their exoskeletons clicking against the polished floor. They were experienced soldiers, veterans of a dozen campaigns. But tonight something had them on edge. Sensor anomaly in Section 7. One hissed through its translator. Ronnie checked his wrist display. Nothing. Probably another glitch. This facility's falling apart. Then he saw her. She walked through the main corridor like a ghost, moving with purpose despite the limp in her left leg. Human. Female. Mid-30s, perhaps. Her clothes were torn, stained with what looked like dried ichor from 3 different species. Her dark hair was matted, her face gaunt. But her eyes, those eyes burned with something Ronnie recognized all too well. The eyes of a parent who had nothing left to lose. The Vraxians raised their plasma weapons. Halt, this is a restricted. She didn't stop, didn't even look at them. She walked straight toward Ronnie, and when she was close enough that he could see the scars on her hands, she whispered, her voice hoarse but steady, "I came for my daughter." Ronnie's blood went cold. He knew exactly which cell she meant. Block D, Section 7. The human child who'd been taken 6 months ago during a raid on the outer colonies. The Union had labeled her a strategic asset because of her parents' research into quantum fold technology. The girl Maisie, he remembered from the file, was being held as leverage. The woman in front of him wasn't asking for permission. She was stating a fact. Ronnie looked at the Vraxian guards, then back at the woman. He'd seen combat across a dozen worlds. He'd witnessed the Krell Armada reduce entire planets to ash. He'd watched the Hive consume a space station in minutes. But he'd never seen anything quite like the quiet, absolute certainty in this human mother's eyes. He thought of the file he'd read on her. Dr. Sarah Chen, astrophysicist, no military training, no combat experience. She'd somehow crossed 3 hostile territories, bypassed orbital defenses, infiltrated the most secure detention facility in the sector, and now stood before armed guards demanding her child back. Humans were classified as a Category 3 species by the Union and remarkable physically. Moderate intelligence, short lifespans. The galaxy had initially dismissed them as another primitive species ripe for exploitation. The galaxy had been wrong. Ronnie had learned something during his time fighting alongside and against humans. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the smartest. They didn't have the Vraxians' armor or the Krell's firepower or the Hive's numbers. But they had something else. Something that made them dangerous in a way the galaxy didn't understand. They had spite. They had stubbornness. They had an absolute refusal to accept defeat when it came to the things they loved. The lead Vraxian guard stepped forward, weapon charging. "You will be terminated, human." "You cannot." Ronnie moved before he realized what he was doing. He stepped between the guards and the woman, his hand moving to his rifle. He looked at the Vraxian soldiers he'd served with for months and said one word, "Run." The guard's antennae twitched in confusion. "What?" I said, "Run." Ronnie's voice was calm, almost friendly. "Because I've seen what happens when you corner a human parent. I've seen the files from the colony wars. I've read the reports from First Contact. When you threaten their children, humans don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They burn down everything between them and their kids. And they don't stop until either they're dead or you are." He gestured to the woman. "Look at her. Really look. She crossed the entire sector to get here. Alone. Do you know what she had to go through? The things she had to do. And she's still standing." The woman's hand moved to her belt, and Ronnie saw it, a crude fusion device, clearly homemade, clearly unstable. Enough to vaporize this entire section. "Last chance," Ronnie said to the guards. "Give her the girl, or she'll blow this whole facility. And you know what? I believe she'll do it. Because that's what humans are. They're the species that looked at the vacuum of space and said, 'I'll breathe somewhere else.' They're the ones who saw galactic empires and said, 'We'll build our own.' They're survivors. And they're absolutely insane when you threaten their own. The Vraxians looked at each other, their translator chips struggling with the concept. Tactical retreat wasn't in their nature, but fear was a universal language. The lead guard lowered its weapon. Section 7. Block D, Cell 47. The woman didn't thank them. She just moved past, her hand never leaving the detonator. Ronnie followed her, keeping his rifle ready in case other guards intervened. They reached the cell in 3 minutes. Through the transparent barrier, a small girl sat on the floor, her blonde hair dirty but her spirit unbroken. When she saw her mother, she screamed, "Mom!" Ronnie overrode the cell locks, his career ending with each keystroke. The barrier dissolved. Maisie ran into her mother's arms, and for a moment, the woman's face crumbled not with weakness, but with the release of a burden she'd carried across the stars. "How did you?" the girl started. "I came for you," her mother said simply. Nothing in this galaxy was going to stop me. Ronnie escorted them to the emergency hangar, disabling security systems as they went. As their stolen shuttle lifted off, he watched from the landing bay, knowing the Union would come for him. But he smiled anyway, because he'd learned the most important rule of the galaxy: never, ever get between a human and their family. The stars themselves would move first.